Now, for more on this, to understand this better, we are being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, Senior Fellow and Military Expert for Defense Priorities from Virginia. Sir, thank you so much for joining us. My first question to you: how do you assess this latest move by Russia to deploy tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus? And do you think this raises the risk of a nuclear threat in this war?
Well, you certainly can't just dismiss it and say that it doesn't have any impact. Yet any time you're moving nuclear weapons and you're even contemplating it, that means that the threshold, the mental threshold for using it is coming down, and people are getting more and more comfortable with the very thought of it, which is just a really bad situation to be in. That being said, that I don't see any evidence at the moment that Russia is seriously considering using nuclear weapons, because right now they don't need to. The tactical situation, the conventional situation is actually on their favoring them at the moment, and it looks like it's going to, at least in the near-term future. The only time I would see Russia resorting to nuclear weapons is if NATO forces physically entered the battle against them, or if by some chance over time the Ukrainian side started having significant military success and was driving Russia out potentially into Crimea, then the chances would go way up. At the moment, I think it's just posturing.
All right, sir. Also, as I mentioned earlier, from what we understand, tactical nuclear weapons happen to be the least regulated weapons. What can you tell us of the implications of this?
Well, part of the problem with this, and this is not just with Russia and Ukraine, this is kind of across the board. Even the United States is into this, where they're trying to develop more and more small yield nuclear weapons, they call them, for tactical nuclear weapons. And the problem is that it makes it some of the countries, it lowers again the threshold of the use, because it makes people think, well, perhaps we can use these tactical nuclear weapons without triggering the mutual assured destruction of strategic nuclear weapons. But the problem is, if you use any nuclear device, people aren't going to really try to measure what was happening. If they see a mushroom cloud go up and they know it was a nuclear strike, then the risk of nuclear retaliation just goes through the roof, and it probably doesn't make any difference. And I think that's the biggest concern, that it makes some people think that it's easier to use than a regular strategic nuclear weapon.
Right. Also, on the other side, we see that the United States Pentagon officials, of course, are defending their decision to hold off support for the F-16s to be sent to Ukraine. How do you assess that, and how do you see that impacting the situation in Ukraine? What do you think is the role of the international community here?
Yeah, I think that Chairman Miley really put it well earlier today, in addition to those sound bites you had a second ago, is that he pointed out that there are over 1,000 fourth and fifth generation fighters in the Russian Air Force. If you're talking a handful of F-16, they're simply not going to make any difference. They're not going to change the terms of the war. It's going to help Ukraine, because certainly they're better than the MiG-29s and the Su-25s that they've been using. But it's not going to change the dynamics. And if people think that this is going to be some sort of game changer, I'm afraid they're going to be disappointed. So I think that probably the United States is a little bit reluctant to want to get involved with this, and I certainly think they should, because the United States has already been the overwhelming supplier of equipment to Ukraine, and if there's going to be any more, it certainly should be European nations or others to provide those. But even then, it needs to be understood, this is not going to change the course of the war.
All right. Well, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast with your insights on this.
Thanks for having me.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.